This video is going to go over Chapter 10, Objective 10, where we're going to talk about aging and the muscle system. So, what happens when the body ages and how does that affect the muscle system, specifically the skeletal muscles? Well, one of the things that happens when you get older, and believe it or not much older, is your muscle mass is reduced. So, you don't have as much muscle mass, which means that's going to increase the time your muscles take to contract in response to nervous stimuli. So, if you ever heard of like an elderly person driving a car and a ball runs out in the road or something like that, it's going to take them longer to react to that, to move their foot from the gas pedal to the brake pedal to stop the car. So that's, again, increased time it takes. Reduced stamina, where maybe people were able to, at a young age, run up and down 6 flights of stairs pretty easily. As you get older, that's going to be harder to do. You may be only able to run up and down the stairs once rather than 3 times to go get your groceries from bottom to top. Increased recovery time. So you go out, you run a mile, next day you're fine, you go out, run a mile again. As you get older, you may run out and run a mile one day, the next day you're still kind of sore, still not recovered as much, so you got to skip a day, go out again the next day. So it takes longer to recover. Believe it or not what y'all want to hear, the loss of muscle starts to begin at 25 years old. So you start losing muscle mass at 25. By 80, your muscle mass has been decreased by 50%. If you look at 80-year-olds, let's say, and take a look at them, they, depending on the person, right, they're going to look a little like, maybe a little more frail, thinner, weaker. Okay. And because this is just part of what happens, so your muscle mass decreases, as well as what we talked about in chapter 6, your skeletal mass decreases. So you're losing bone and muscle as you age, and that's going to cause these things to happen. Believe it or not, you can slow this process down. You can't stop it. You can't stop aging, but you can slow it down. And just like with skeletal muscle, or with the skeleton, the more weight-bearing activities you put on the bone, the more bone mass you're going to maintain. Same thing with muscle mass. The more weight-bearing activities you do, the more muscle you're going to be able to maintain. Now, that's not cardiovascular. I'm not talking about going out and running down the block. That's good as well. That's good for heart and circulation, right? But you also need to maintain skeleton and bone, skeletal muscle mass and bone, and that's going to be weightlifting type activities. So one of the other things that happens as you age is the surface area at the neuromuscular junction decreases. So while you're setting that action potential down that motor neuron, you're just not going to have that synapse is going to be smaller. So while you may be secreting acetylcholine, there's not as much stuff on the other side for it to attach to. So those ligand-gated sodium ion channels decrease in number because there's just not as much there's not as much surface area over there on the other side. Action potentials stimulate muscle fibers more slowly. So again, that's just because you've got less surface area at the junction. The number of motor neurons decreases. We talked about that previously when we talked about motor units and how, motor unit number 1 and motor unit number 2 might be servicing the same muscle. But if motor unit number 1 goes down, you're not able to use 100% of those muscle cells within that muscle, which means it's not going to work as well. And again, that's also going to account for less precise control, since motor neurons innervate a great number of muscles as motor neurons die off. This is why maybe grandma used to sew or knit really well, but now she's having a harder time maybe threading the needle, needs a little bit of help with that. Again, that's that precision that we talked about previously. Longest muscle in the body. What do y'all think? Sartorius muscle. It's about 2 feet in length. Remember, that's going to go from the lateral side of the hip all the way over to the medial side of the knee. There are some items on the Moodle page for you to do for a grade, so make sure you get those done. Make sure you study for your test and take the practice test, and that will help get you ready for the test. So check your due dates on the actual date when the assignments are due and when the test is due. And that concludes Chapter 10.